new story out today about Robert Mueller's investigation. Here's another doozy. I believe we are now finally at the heart of the matter. So let me quote the New York Times here and I'll explain why I think this is so important. The special counsel, Robert Mueller, has subpoenaed the Trump organization to turn over documents, including some related to Russia, according to two people briefed on the matter. The order is the first known instance of the special counsel demanding records directly related to President Trump's businesses, bringing the investigation closer to the president. Ding, 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 we have a winner, there you go. This has never been about Twitter impressions that Trump got from Russian meddling in the election. It's never been about the 21 Tumblr accounts that the Russians had. It's always been about the business deal that Trump has had with the Russians for a long time. That's the real heart of the matter, and it's the money laundering. So until we got to Trump's business records and finances, all of it was patty cakes. Well, now we're in the business records. So earlier I told you about how Mueller had subpoenaed some of his financial documents and materials from his bank, especially Deutsche Bank. Now that is really important. That's, you follow the money, you'll have your answers. Now he's inside the Trump organization, or at least requesting those records. And we're near the end game here, folks. Word of the subpoena comes as Mr. Mueller appears to be broadening his investigation to examine the role of foreign money may have played in funding in Mr. Trump's political activities. This is exactly what I've been warning you about for over a year now on the Young Turks. I said it was money laundering from day one. And so to help that deal along, the Russians might have put some money into this particular campaign, but their ties to Trump are deeper and historic. So you must look into that. Now, by the way, it's not just the Russians. In recent weeks, Mr. Mueller's investigators have questioned witnesses, including an advisor to the United Arab Emirates, about the flow of Emirati money into the United States. So there's a lot of different countries trying to bring in cash to affect our elections. Now, our elections are an auction, so a lot of these countries are thinking, well, it appears that they can't even trace the money. A lot of it is dark money, and you're just allowed to buy these politicians. So let's maybe try to buy the president and see what happens. Well, luckily, at least this one is important enough that they're bothering to do an investigation, and perhaps we'll find out the truth of the matter in regards to those countries and others. And look, you can hardly blame the foreign countries because they think companies get to buy these politicians all the time, and they're multinational. So if a Russian or a Chinese company can be part of a trade group in America and purchase politicians because we have unlimited money in our politics, we have private financing in our elections, why can't we buy them? Now, it's illegal, but again, very hard to trace because of the dark money. And we should go to the root of the problem, not just leave it at this and fix it. We should take all of the private financing out of the elections. Otherwise, they're just gonna go, oh, okay, you get caught if you go after the president, so let's just go buy 100 congressmen or 20 or 50 senators instead. Okay, so now back to this story. The Trump organization has said that it never really had real estate holdings in Russia, but witnesses recently interviewed by Mr. Mueller have been asked about a possible real estate deal in Moscow. Now, I happen to think that that's not the real issue at hand. I'm not worried that Trump was going to do some deal in Russia and hence wanted to help the Russians a little bit more. He already has a lot of those deals throughout the world, and he's already had giant conflict of interest issues in Argentina, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the list goes on. No, that's regular Donald Trump corruption. No, it's not what Trump was planning to do in Russia. It's the money laundering that the Russians were doing through Trump in America. Now, I say that because I've already covered dozens of stories for you guys detailing some portions of what appears to be from the outside world money laundering, but you have to have the real actual financial documents and the business documents, and that's why these subpoenas are really important if you want to actually prove it in a court of law. And if you're going after the president because you think he might have broken the law, well, you better have really good evidence, and that's what Mueller is trying to gather up now. So an annoying part of this story is something that the press is calling a red line. And I'll tell you why it's annoying in a second, but let me read this from Maggie Haberman and Michael Schmidt's piece in the New York Times. Mr. Trump said in an interview with the New York Times in July of last year that the special counsel would be crossing, quote, a red line if he looked into his family's finances beyond any relationship with Russia. Well, first of all, the New York Times asked that question of him. Trump didn't bring it up himself, so I really blame the New York Times for that. They've done other great work on this issue, great journalism in this case and others. But when they were interviewing Trump, they're like, is it gonna be a red line? Is it gonna be a red line if he looks into your finances? So Trump's like, oh, that's a thing I can complain about? Yes, that'll be a red line if he looks into my personal finances. Why? Why did you even ask him that? What a silly question that is. And I'll tell you why it's silly. Because if Trump had a deal with the Russians which led to collusion in the election, well, it might be a financial deal that helps him personally. So how else would you look into that other than looking into his personal finances? That's the heart of the investigation. So I don't know why the New York Times brought up this red line, and the journalists love freaking out about red lines, and they're all like, oh, this might be a red line. Red line in what? Is it in law? Is it statutory? No, it's a phrase you made up for no reason. So look here, more context from this particular New York Times story. Mr. Mueller was appointed in May to investigate whether Mr. Trump's campaign colluded with the Russians to influence the 2016 presidential election and any other matters that may arise from the inquiry. Now, this would arise from the inquiry because what is Trump's motivation to help the Russians? What are the Russian motivations to help Trump? In order to investigate that, you'd have to know, do they have any financial deals? So any discussion of a red line is total BS, made up by the press to just make it sound more dramatic. Oh, a red line has been crossed. No, there's no red line. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's just a normal part of the investigation that you would do in almost any investigation along these lines. And they would do it for a private citizen. You would look into why, if there has been a crime committed, what's the motive? It's preposterous that that's even a part of the discussion. Now, finally, another piece of good news is that, as usual, Trump is so arrogant that he thinks he might be able to outwit the prosecutors. So please try. So the lawyers have advised Mr. Trump to refuse an interview, but the president wants to do it with Mueller as he believes he has done nothing wrong and can easily answer investigators' questions. It is inconceivable that he would not lie to those investigators. It's inconceivable that Donald Trump can go a whole paragraph without lying, which would be another crime. It's inconceivable that he is intelligent enough not to accidentally say something that'll get him in massive trouble. And by the way, I'm not interested in getting him in trouble on nitpicky stuff that he says by accident that is not a big deal. No. I only care if he accidentally reveals the money laundering or things he actually did that are major issues. Now, if it turns out he didn't really do it, and he goes in and tells a couple of white lies to Mueller about his affair with Stormy Daniels, I'm not interested in a Ken Starr-like investigation. Don't care about that. What I care about is the heart of the matter, and I think that Mueller is closing in on it. And if Trump goes to talk to him to try to outsmart him, that would be wonderful. Because, hey, look, if he's innocent, then he's right. It'll help clarify the matter, and then Mueller will have a better sense of it. If he's not, there's no way he's gonna outsmart Mueller, and we'll find out a lot more. But as usual, follow the money and you'll have your answer. If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.